Hey there, my 504 TAC fam. I pray everyone is well. Thanks for joining me for the analysis continuation of Mr. Mark Smith's 2024 Federalist Society Conference Speech. Please pardon my delay. I've been quite busy getting the store up and running. We do have a few items on there now. It's limited, but there's some pretty cool items. Y'all definitely go check it out. 504tactical.com/store. That's 504tactikal.com/store. Y'all please go over there and get you some merch and support us. We're super extremely grateful that y'all can be here with us. So the other day we covered a few things on Mr. Smith's Federalist Society speech. And so delving back into what Mr. Smith is teaching us, so far we've established the correct jurisprudence, the correct era of law to look to involving anything to do with our rights. We've covered what constitutes bearable arms, and we've covered the dangerous and unusual precedent. Now, let's hear what Mr. Smith has to say about Rahimi. He breaks this down so beautifully. Y'all take a listen to this.
This is the baseline understanding of Rahimi. Rahimi is the first example of what I call a routine Second Amendment case decided in a routine way. If you think about it, if you're Thomas Kuhn writing about paradigms and scientific revolutions, I would argue that metaphorically, Heller, MacDonald, and Bruen were sort of part of a scientific revolution in terms of articulating a Second Amendment framework in an originalist methodology. It really lays out the rules of the road. What makes Rahimi kind of interesting and special is it is the first example of an ordinary case being decided by virtue of what had prior to that been a scientific revolution in Second Amendment jurisprudence. So what really Rahimi is ordinary science. It's an ordinary people doing ordinary science after the occurrence of a scientific revolution. And that's what Rahimi is really about. It's just an application of all the groundbreaking work the Supreme Court had done in the prior Second Amendment cases. Now, with that said, I think Rahimi is just the basic application of Bruen and Heller, because if you look at it, the how and the why are clearly satisfied. Both the how and the why were satisfied because there were two sets of laws that were so ubiquitous. I think they were referenced in both Blackstone and Hawkins. So we're not talking about any kind of outlier laws. These were the surety laws, which is a civil law that ahead of time said that if someone is found by a court to be a threat to engage in violence against somebody else, they could be forced to post a bond or get sureties, obviously finding of somebody being dangerous. Likewise, the going armed statute said if you use a firearm to go armed and threaten people and terrorize people, you can go to prison. And the Supreme Court said that the why is satisfied by those both historical analog laws, because again, the affray law said if you actually misuse a firearm, and the surety law says if it looks like you're going to misuse a firearm in a finding by a court, the whys are the same, because the why is to stop somebody from misusing firearms going forward into the future. And the hows are very similar because it restricts the ability to possess firearms, either because they put you in prison because you violate the going armed laws, or they make you post a bond. And if you can't do that, they put you in prison, I believe, under the surety laws. So either way, you're looking at the how and the why are lining up to prevent and by the way, the holding of Rahimi is extremely narrow. If you think about it, all Rahimi holds is this. If there's an actual court finding that you are a danger to someone else, you can be temporarily disarmed. Look at all the qualifiers there. There's got to be a finding by a court that you're bad and a danger. It's only temporary disarmament, and that's really all it held. It doesn't get into due process or anything else because Mr. Rahimi admitted that he was a danger, admitted to the entry of this, didn't waive his due process rights, so none of those issues were presented in Rahimi.
Y'all heard him correctly, right? The constitutional methodology is clear, crystal clear. One must be a violent danger to be temporarily disarmed. Y'all heard that right. Temporarily and violent being the key words here. So stay with me, y'all. We're almost done. I promise. In the next clip, Mr. Smith explains what must take place under the proper Heller-Bruen standard of justice, and rightfully so, I might add, in my humble opinion.
Cases. Now that I've just shown you what violates the rules and cannot be analogized, and then I've just shown you how to deal with the how and the why, which is really another metaphor for deriving the historical principle of a case to apply, I want to get into something that I don't want to call this new because the Supreme Court talked about it, but it's something new today, and that is the 5 or 6 approaches to stopping a too high level of generality. One of the concerns that people have posited, including Justice Barrett, is that you can always derive a principle from historical analogs at too high a level to eviscerate the Second Amendment right. For example, every law ever enacted, guess what, is in the name of public safety and security, right? So, but you can't just say just because a law was enacted for public security, that justifies all modern day gun control laws today. The Supreme Court has repeatedly rejected that. That's exactly what Justice Barrett raised as a potential problem, though. So I'm now going to posit a series of third rails guidelines that says that if the principle that you derive from your analog, from your historical analogs and the principles derived from those analogs, if they violate any of what I'm about to say, they're no good. The principle must be rejected because it's too high of a generalized approach. The first is if it violates the directly contrary to the Second Amendment's guarantee of the right of the people to keep and bear arms, it is too high. Judge Kavanaugh discussed this in Heller 2 when he was on the D.C. Court of Appeals when he wrote that, quote, post-ratification adoption or acceptance of laws that are inconsistent with the original meaning of the constitutional text obviously cannot overcome or alter that text. So to the extent that you're deriving a principle that will alter the Second Amendment text, that is not allowed, as now Justice Kavanaugh pointed out in Heller 2 on the D.C. Circuit. Number 2, the historical principle derived or alleged to be derived by the government cannot violate Supreme Court precedent. So if there is a principle derived by historical analogs today by the government in a case that would violate, let's say, the Heller holding on in common use firearms cannot be banned, that is also a principle that means that the historical principle argued for by the government is too high a level of generality and cannot be accepted. Third, if the derived principle cannot, and this is key, the derived principle alleged by the government cannot come from the perspective of criminal misconduct or the perspective of the criminal. What I mean by this is if you look specifically at Heller, the perspective on Second Amendment rights is how do ordinary law-abiding Americans use firearms? They don't focus on how criminals misuse firearms. We saw that specifically in Heller because Justice Breyer talked about handguns being used by criminals for criminals for bad purposes. The Supreme Court rejected that mode of analysis and simply said that, hey, all that matters is that Americans value these handguns for self-defense, and that's the perspective. So if the principle derived is all about how criminals misuse firearms.
So if y'all stayed with me this long so far, thank you. Not just myself, but Big D over here, all of us over here at 504 Tactical, we truly do appreciate the shite out of the support y'all give us. Shameless plug. I know, but, there's going to be some links in the Duma Flaci down below if y'all want free money to invest into, a couple of different things here. I've got, number one, I've got crypto.com link down there. It's also on the website on the deals page. And there's a link going to be linked down there for Funderize. And that's also going to be on the website under the deals page. So y'all go in there and get you some free cash. It'll help you open up an account and prepare for what's coming. And especially the ever so important digital gold, Bitcoin. So if y'all really want to support us, we've got a few more items on the store like I mentioned earlier. Y'all please go over there and get you a shirt, get you a hoodie. I'm working on a couple of other items, so we will have those up very shortly. We're also in the works of trying to get some tactical products on the store as well. So bear with us. We are still brand new at this. So God willing, everything's going to work out okay. It's up to y'all. And, make sure you leave comments. Let us know what you want. let us know what you want us to do, and we'll, in our best, we'll make our very best efforts to get it done. I won't make promises. I do not like to make promises, but we will absolutely do our best to get it done. And as long as God's in control, anything is possible. So anyway, getting back to where we are. This is the last clip coming up right here. And Mr. Smith briefly touches on the clear purpose of our sacred Second Amendment. Yes, sacred. It is enshrined in the Bill of Rights for a reason. It's number 2 for a reason, right behind number 1 for a reason. The 2 protects the 1, and really protects all of them. The 2 protects all of the rest of our rights. It doesn't matter what type of tyranny it is. It can be domestic tyranny. It can be criminal tyranny. It can be government tyranny. It can be your neighbor tyranny. It could be anything. So, I digress.
Likewise, we must keep in mind that the purpose of the Second Amendment, as articulated repeatedly by the Supreme Court, is to protect Americans against all forms of tyranny. All forms of tyranny, and that could be anything from street criminals, could be terrorists, could be animal attacks, as referenced by Justice Kennedy in our argument in Heller. It could also be against repelling foreign invasions, domestic insurrections, and the like. So to the extent that a principle derived by the government violates or eviscerates any of those purposes, that again would be too high a level of generality. And last but not least, I would say that if the proposed principle derived by the government, if applied in 18th century America, would actually turn the American founders into felons, that also was too high of a principle. For example, if you were to buy into the anti-gunner arguments in Bruen, that at the time of the founding, no one was allowed to carry guns, that was verboten, that would mean that every single one of the first 6 presidents of the United States were felons, because every single one of them undeniably carried guns all the time, from Washington to Jefferson to Jackson and so on. And if the principle derived in a case by the government would somehow turn every felon, every founder into a felon, if that principle were applied in the 18th century, that again is not allowed. So simply to close the speech as follows. The Second Amendment, it's important to remember in Second Amendment case, the founders had a lived experience with firearms. They were ubiquitous. They had them everywhere they went. They viewed this as part of being a citizen. And they viewed this as such an important right, they literally wrote it in to the Bill of Rights. So I will just sum up by saying that we must never forget the Supreme Court has called the Second Amendment unqualified right. It is always the ultimate history. If there's ever ambiguity or a question about whether or not the government should win, the government should lose, because it's actually in the text of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. That should take priority over any airy-fairy history or, attempt to limit those rights.
All right. So what did y'all think of Mark Smith's speech? I'm going to throw this out there because it may very well be relevant to the in common use standard of justice, which is correct, in my opinion. You can't ban something that's in common use, by citizens for lawful purposes. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, y'all. But if I recall correctly, in order for items to be Second Amendment protected, so they say, even though every Second Amendment tool, both offensively and defensively, is technically protected by our Second Amendment. And it's not the Second Amendment that protects it. The Bill of Rights just recognizes these rights that we were born with. God gave us those rights. Government didn't give them to us. Government can't take them away. Again, I go back to the violent, dangerous, and temporarily. It was never intended for people to lose. Actually, if you lose it, it's a privilege. It's not a right. To lose their right permanently, forever, for making stupid decisions. Look at our government. Look at all these swamp puppets in our government. The stupid and illegal things that they've done to us, the American people, for decades upon decades upon decades. Those are the real criminals. And in my humble opinion, every single restriction they call laws, every single restriction ever written out since Congress has gone rogue is in fact null and void. Period. Null and void. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's about time we the people start realizing how to use our rights. This is our country. This isn't the puppets' country. They work for us. You jackleg sons of biscuits work for us. But you look at us like we're the criminals? We've all screwed up in our life. I don't care who you are. You, me, we're not perfect at all. We all screw up. We all make bad judgment calls. Period. There was one man that walked this earth. One man that walked this earth that was perfect. And his name was Emmanuel, Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Period. No getting around it. Everyone else is born flawed. I digress. I'm sorry, I went off on a rant. Alright, so yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. In order for items to be Second Amendment protected, isn't the number threshold, what is it? 140, 200,000? If, correct me down there, please, because I don't really remember the number. But even if the number's 500,000, okay, let's just call it 500,000. Well, why not? Even if it's 500,000, shit. Just the suppressors bought in 2024 alone in the first half. What's that number? 1.4 million or so? 1.5 million? Just that number alone makes them protected. They shouldn't even be categorized. They're devices, they're protective devices. You don't categorize and serialize safety glasses or earmuffs, do you? No, they don't. No. Anyway. Alright. Sorry, y'all. I'm just saying, alright. I digress. Y'all, I went off on a tangent. So, I hope y'all enjoyed Mr. Smith's speech. I did. I thought it was a thorough enjoyment. And y'all go over and check him out. I'm going to link him down in the Duma Flachi as well. I know I linked it on the first part of the video on part 1, but I'll go ahead and link it on this one as well, just so you'll have a reference. Follow him. I'm sure you do. If you're following this clown right here, then I know you're probably following him. He's way more intelligent than this guy. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and give us a follow, give us a like, give us a big old thumbs up if you get any kind of even entertainment or value out of this. We'll have some product videos coming out here pretty soon. So, all right, well, stay tactical, my frosty friends. God bless.